In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products?
In our final media product, Evasion, we utilised, developed and challenged many different forms of conventions of typical media products.
The first convention of the action thriller genre that we used was the use of fast-paced cutting speeds throughout our film.
From the first few shots to the final escape, our film utilises typical fast cutting speeds and used in films such as District 9.
Another convention that we used was the use of obstacles. This is something which is typically used in chase scenes to show the desire to escape and add more action to the scene.
A convention that we developed from viewings of real media products such as The Wild Bunch was to use the black and white effect freeze frames to introduce the titles. We decided this didn't fit the atmosphere of an action film, so we developed this by slowing the clip down with the black and white effect when bringing in the titles. This didn't take away from the speed and intensity of our film.
We also challenged some typical media conventions in our film, as we filmed our media product during the day, challenging the typical convention of an action or thriller film using darkness, such as The Watchmen.
We think that using the light not only allowed for better quality of filming, as we didn't have the level of equipment required for filming in the dark, but it also sets the scene showing the protagonist in a rural area, somewhere typically not associated with action.
Another convention which we challenged was the typical use of white text on a black background. We subverted this by inverting the colours, so that the background came from a smooth transition with the company intro. How does your media product represent particular social groups?
Our media product mainly represents a social group of young adults.
This is immediately shown by the use of mise-en-scène in the clothing of the two characters. Both are wearing typically teenage clothes, and this helps to create a sense of curiosity with our protagonist and antagonist, as we don't know quite why they are chasing each other, and the fact they are teenagers suggests a typically urban crime has been committed.
Teenagers are generally represented in film as being violent, and in our film the obvious action and conflict between the two characters helps to show this, with the protagonist and antagonist chasing each other for an unknown reason.
The setting also causes some confusion when showing our teenage social group, as typically a film such as this would be set in an urban area to reflect the urban teenagers who we cast as the characters. However, our film is set in a rural area with these typically urban teenagers, representing them as out of the ordinary and creating enigmas about why the characters are in this location.
Another way we represent this social group is through the use of agility and dexterity of the two characters. The use of the stunt shows the protagonist and antagonist as young and physically fit, as they can chase each other and perform stunts which an older person would not, helping to represent this teenage group.
What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why?
Our media product is one which would most probably be distributed by a British independent film company, as it doesn't fit with typical conventions needed to be a blockbuster such as Casino Royale, which is distributed by Columbia Pictures.
Typical blockbuster action or thriller films use conventional stereotypes such as a clear linear story, and is often more cinematic and explosive than our film, which is gritty and not as polished.
In our film we have tried to challenge some conventions, so our film would most likely not be taken on by a big American film studios such as Paramount and Warner Bros.
These studios are looking more at making profit than taking risks, so we'll go for a safer, more familiar film which is certain to generate as much money as possible. Unlike independent British film distributors who are willing to take risks on new and exciting content, as they aren't as bothered about generating an audience and making profit.
Some examples of British film distributors that are likely to take on our film are Film 4, who have distributed films such as Attack the Block and the Inbetweeners movie, and Momentum Pictures, who distribute films such as the highly successful The King's Speech and Law Abiding Citizen.
We feel that these companies would be much more suited to our film, as we have tried to avoid and subvert typical blockbuster conventions, for example making the setting rural instead of a big city and using two British actors. Who would be the audience for your media product?
The audience for our media product would be mainly boys between the ages of 13 and 19. This is due to the action and thriller genre of our film and the conventions used in that. These conventions are used in films such as James Bond.
The reason our audience is in this age range is because of the fast-paced adrenaline rush associated with the film, which is common for the teenage boy age group, as they're much more common to liking concepts such as violence and action in their films compared to teenage girls who are more suited to romantic comedy or other genres. How did you attract or address your audience?
Our media product attracts members of our target audience because of the genre, plot and characters.
The genre we used allows typical conventions to be followed that appeal massively to our audience.
The use of fast-paced editing and a wide variety of stunts is commonly used in similar Hollywood films and attracts our audience as it is cool and allows them to idolise the character.
Our plot is also something that attracts our target audience due to the vague introduction into the story. It entices the audience's curiosity and leaves an impression of crime. Our target audience are commonly interested in crime in these films, and that is what attracts them.
Finally, our casting is another part that plays a major role in attracting our audience. As stated before, the audience like to idolise the protagonist, so by casting a teenage character as the protagonist, it allows them to be the character they can relate to and easier idolise.
What have you learned about technologies from the process of constructing this product?
We have learnt a lot during the production of our media product about the technologies we used.
An immediate aspect of our technologies that we noticed was just how difficult it is to film in certain weather conditions with the quality of our camera. As we were using a reasonably old camera, in our first attempt at filming, the fog gave us a tough time and made it a lot harder to film, as distance shots were simply impossible as the characters disappeared in the fog.
We quickly decided we needed to reshoot and reshoot on a clearer day so that we could get the best image quality and atmosphere for our finished film.
Another thing we learned about our technologies was how to utilise Sony Vegas to edit our film.
Both of us were involved in the editing of our film, so we had to learn our way around Sony Vegas and learn how to use features such as the slow motion to ensure that our film came out as well as possible.
Because we had such a short turnaround on our film, we had to make sure our editing was up to scratch and the effects we wanted would be implemented. Luckily, one of us had Sony Vegas on his home computer, so could do some of the editing at home.
We also learnt that moving shots are very hard to pull off without professional equipment such as a camera dolly.
We attempted to get some over-the-shoulder and POV shots, but without this professional equipment we simply cannot get stable and clear shots suitable for use in our film, something we will definitely remember for next time we have to create a media product.
Overall, both of us have learnt a lot about the variety of technologies we used in the process of making our media product, and we hope we can take these skills forward for our future media products.
In looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learned in the progression from it to the full product?
In the progression from our preliminary task to our final media product, we have learnt a lot about many different areas of media production.
In our preliminary task, we had a much bigger group, which was good for splitting the workload between us, but after splitting it into a much smaller group for our final media product, we have learned that smaller groups are much more practical, as you can convey your ideas much better and all members of the group have to pull their weight to ensure successful production of your media product.
Another thing we have learnt in the progression from our preliminary is the importance of location and setting when filming.
Our preliminary was filmed in our school, which, while practical at the time, simply doesn't cut it for a professional media product.
We made sure that our final media product was set in the best location possible for our film and was practical for the stunts and jumps we wanted in our chase scene, something both of us will take forward for future media productions.
Another significant progression from our preliminary to the final product is the increase in the complexity of editing of our product.
In our preliminary film, we used few features of Sony Vegas as we didn't have enough experience with the program to utilise all the features. However, in our final product, we have utilised many more of the features of Sony Vegas, for example our text effects and the black and white effect over some of our clips.
Overall, we have progressed significantly from our preliminary task, and we can utilise the skills we've learned in other future media products.